Hi, everybody. I'm so honored and pleased to be a part of your evening of honoring Rochel Imeinu. Coming to you from Efrat. You can see right behind me is actually Beit Lechem. You can see in the distance Yerushalayim. This is a friend's house that's right across the street from my house. So my house is right down there. And I'm very happy to be a part of this, and I just want to also send out an invitation that you should all come and visit, and you're more than welcome to stay with me for Shabbos, Bezrat Hashem, when travel commences once again. So Efrat is famously the place that is mentioned in the Torah when the pasuk says, "V'tamat Rachel v'tikaver baderech Efrata hi Beit Lechem," that Rachel passed away and she was buried on the road to Efrat, which is now Beit Lechem. Rochel Imeinu's kever is, actually right behind me over there. And Baruch Hashem, I've been zocha, I'm sure many of you also, to daven there many times over the years. And what is it about kever Rochel? What is it about Rochel Imeinu that enables us to feel so close to her, that helps us feel like she's really, mevaka al baneha, that she's out there and she's crying for us? I remember a couple of years ago, my husband and I were driving at night on Tisha B'Av to the Old City, and we had an idea that we would go and be by the Kotel on Tisha B'Av, and Basof, we actually got into Yerushalayim, and there's like a left turn or a right turn, and we decided that we would turn right and we would go to kever Rochel instead, and it was just such a beautiful, beautiful davening, and I'll cherish it always, and it made me feel so comforted. So what is it about Rochel Imeinu? The Torah tells us that when Yaakov first met Rochel, the Torah says, Vayashak Yaakov leRachel vayisa et kolo vayevk, that he went over and he kissed her and he raised his voice and he wept. And Rashi tells us that he wept because he saw that in the future he and Rochel Imeinu would not be buried together. Yaakov is buried with all of the other Imaos and Avos in that direction. He's buried with Leah, and Rochel is right behind me in the opposite direction, and they are separated. But the Shalach Kodesh, he explains that it was not just a matter of being upset that they weren't going to be together because he loved her so much. It was a matter of that Yaakov saw the reason why Rochel Imeinu was not going to be buried with him, the reason why she had to be buried baderech, on the way. And the reason was that Am Yisrael were going to go into galut, into exile, and they were going to pass by where she is buried, and she would cry for them. And that would also be the spot from which she would call out to us to come back, that she would cry out for us and we would be comforted in the darkness of Galus. And from there, we draw the strength to daven ourselves to be returned, to bring the Geula, to be brought into the light by Hashem of Geula. And we know that Rochel did not have the easiest time. So we are very connected to her in her suffering, in the fact that she had to go through many, many challenges. And the fact that she had to and how she dealt with it can be a comfort to us. So the Torah tells us that after, the whole story with she was supposed to marry Yaakov and Lavan did his, switch, and Yaakov ended up marrying Leah first, and they ultimately Yaakov and Rochel did get married, but there was a shared marriage. And Rochel saw that Leah was having baby after baby, and Rochel was barren. Rochel did not have any children. And so the Torah tells us that at one point she turned to Yaakov Avinu and she said, Hava li banim, give me children. Ve'im ayin meta anochi. And if I don't have any, then I'm as good as dead. I might as well die. And Yaakov, we think that he loves her so much, he would answer like, oh, dear, I love you so much. But he actually answers her in a very, very charif, a very sharp way. He says, or the Torah tells us, Vayichar af Yaakov berachel, that Yaakov was angry at Rochel Imeinu. Vayomer hatachat alokim ani anochi? Am I instead of Hashem? Like, am I Hashem? Can I do that for you? Asher mana mimech pri baten, that has blocked your womb from bearing fruit. Am I the one that did that? No, I'm not. And Rashi tells us that essentially when Rochel Imeinu was saying Hava li banim, she wasn't saying that Yaakov was in charge of that, but she was saying, Yaakov, daven for me. Daven for me to enable me to have children, just like your father, Yitzchak, daven for your mother, Rivka, so daven for me. And the Ramban says that in Yaakov's answer, we see, what was he so angry about? And Ramban says that it's because he was already davening for her. Of course he was davening for her, but that his davening was not enough. And the Ramban says that the Torah says, Ki mimena nimna pri habaten, velo mimenu, that it was from her that Hashem had blocked the fruits of the womb coming out, not from him. Yaakov already had children through Leah. So his davening was not the same as Rochel Imeinu. Rochel Imeinu wanted a child so badly, and she had to be the one to turn to Hashem. And the Ramban goes on and he says that she learns from this not to rely on anybody else's davening. It says, Sheba litpalel al atzma el shomei tza'aka. She has to come and daven for herself to the one who hears all of our cries. And it's only when she starts davening for herself in that way that that's the beginning of an opening. And she does, in fact, merit to, of course, have 2 children. But we see from this that something had to come out of her depths. And Rebbe Nachman of Breslov teaches that a person's yearnings become the vessel for their actions, right? If we don't want something, then we don't make it happen. But if we want something, the more we want it, the more effort we put towards making it happen. And he teaches that sometimes Hashem puts a barrier in our way in order to awaken an even stronger desire in us. That when we see a barrier, it causes us to dig deep and try even harder. And the Tanya actually says a very, very similar thing, because Rabbi Nachman is explaining that those efforts that we make are very, very precious to Hashem. When we dig deep and we try to act out upon our ratzon, our desire, when we try to get close to Hashem, when we try to do Torah and mitzvahs, that trying is very precious. And in Tanya, in Perek Kaf Zayin, the Alter Rebbe says, "V'lachen al yipol lev adam alav." Don't become depressed when, right? He's talking about the idea that negative thoughts continue to come into our heads, that negative thoughts disturb us from our davening or from our learning or from, living a positive life. And he says, don't let that cause you to become depressed. V'lo yira levavo me'od, and to be troubled at heart. Gam im yihiyeh ken kol yamav b'milchama zo, even because you're going to be in this battle your whole life. This is an ongoing struggle. Ki ulai lekach nivra, because maybe it was for this that you were created. Maybe it was for this struggle, davka, that you were born. V'zot avodato, and that's his work. That's his toil in this world. That's his job. That's our job in this world. Lachpia l'sitra achra tamid, to continuously fight to subdue the sitra achra. And the Tanya goes on to say that there are, of course, 2 drachim in Avodas Hashem. There's the derech of the tzaddik, who changes all darkness into light, and then there's the avodah of the Beinoni, and us who try to be Beinonim, who are constantly struggling to, reveal the light in out of the darkness, to subdue the darkness. There's a story about Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev that he was davening on Yom Kippur, and there was a member of his kehillah, and he said to this man after Yom Kippur, he said, I heard your davening. I know what you were davening for on Yom Kippur. Before Kol Nidre, you came to Hashem and you said, Hashem, I spend so much effort. I spend so much energy trying to figure out how to daven and how to learn, how to find time for that in the midst of struggling for parnasa. So let's make a deal. You give me 1,000 rubles at the beginning of the year, and I won't have to have that struggle, and I'll just, have the parnasa, and then I could devote all my time to studying and learning. But then, by Shacharis, you realized that maybe 1,000 rubles was too big of a temptation. So you bargained with Hashem and you said, okay, you know what, 1,000 rubles isn't so good, but let's make 2 installments, 500 at the beginning of the year, 500 in the middle of the year. And that way, I will be able to keep on learning and davening, in peace, and not have to feel this constant, struggle hanging over my head to work out the time to do it. And then he said, then the Kedushas Levi, the Berditchever, said to this man, but then by the end of the day, you were back to bargain with Hashem again. You said, you know what, 500 isn't so good either. It's too much temptation. Give me 4 installments, 250, 250, 250, 250. That way, I'll know that it's coming. It will be a regular thing, and I will be able to put all my kochot into learning and davening. And the Kedushas Levi says to him, how do you know that that's what Hashem wants from you? How do you know that what the world, what Shamayim, what Hashem wants and needs from you isn't that energy? Dafka, that banging your head against the wall to try and find time to learn and daven, that may be what Hashem wants from you. That may be what you were put in this world to do, to bring that energy of effort into the world. Sometimes we feel like our efforts don't count for anything unless they arrive at an achievement. Unless we get to the destination, that our journey, our steps along the way, they don't count for anything. And it's not true. It's absolutely not true. We know that every effort that is put into Torah, to davening, to making a connection with Hashem, to making a connection with our family, to bringing light into the world, every single effort is treasured and precious to Hashem. That every effort makes a difference. And that's why Rochel Imeinu was buried on the way, baderech, because we are all always on the way. We are all always baderech. And sometimes we feel like it's not enough. But you know what? It's on the way that Hashem is getting that energy from us. It's on the way that we're bringing that on the way energy into the world. We shouldn't ever think that our davening is not being heard. We shouldn't ever think that our efforts are not achieving at something. We shouldn't ever think that all the meals and all the loads of laundry and all the Band-Aids that we put on and all the efforts to, keep our house neat, that it doesn't count. It all counts. Every single one of them is a building block. And ultimately, it is taking us somewhere. But there's an energy of being on the way that is giving chizuk to the world. And that is what Rochel Imeinu is doing. Our on the way, the energy that we put to being baderech, that is building the Beis HaMikdash Hashlishi. So Rochel Imeinu was buried on the way to teach us that on the way is a very chashuva thing. On the way means something to Hashem. On the way should give us so much chizuk. And Rochel Imeinu is sitting there and she is crying for us because she is with us on the way. May we all be zoche to continuously keep putting one foot in front of the other on the way and get that chizuk from Rochel Imeinu who is with us to ultimately see the opening of the gates of Shamayim and meriting true understanding and the greatest light in the world with the arrival of Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meheira b'yameinu mamish. Sending so much love, and I would love to see you all in person, and mwah, hugs and kisses. Be well.